Okay.
It's going now, okay.
So, do you remember what a cognate is?
Yes.
What is it?
I don't know.
The quality is awful, oh my goodness.
Sounds the same.
Yeah. Example?
House.
House.
Hello.
Hello. Here.
She do.
What'd you say?
Like there's like this word she.
Yeah.
There's like this.
Z?
Yeah.
Those are close enough for me. Yeah. Don't film students, please. Just film me. So, cognates are words that look the same, sound the same, and mean the same thing. German and English have a lot of cognates. German and French have some cognates. English and French have cognates. I'm going to give you a little bit of background as to why. So we're going to take a deep, actually pretty simplistic dive into history. I'm not a history teacher. I like history as just stories. So I'm going to oversimplify some stuff and gloss over a few things. So please forgive me of that right away. But why do English and German have so many cognates? Because they share a common history. Let's talk a little bit about that history. This map, does this make any sort of sense to you?
Yes.
We are in 9 AD in Europe and North Africa. Who claims to own all of this? Rome. The Romans. Have you heard of these people?
Nope.
Yeah, they had an empire that lasted 800 years. Well, the empire didn't, but they started as a kingdom, went to a republic, went to an empire. Big, long history, very fascinating stuff. The Romans were very good at whatever they tried to do. They had an extremely impressive and large military. They were able to build humongous structures like the Colosseum or the Circus Maximus. They built roads all over Europe to connect the cities in their empire. They traded, they got rich, they had a fairly sophisticated society at a time where not many other places did. Yeah, through technology, through war, through learning. And the empire in 9 AD under the Emperor Augustus, Augustus came after Julius Caesar. You've probably heard of Julius Caesar. Yeah. Looked like this. Fairly large. And when the Romans would take over a new portion of Europe, they would often do so by suppressing the tribes that lived there. Like when they took over Gaul, they assimilated the Gaelic tribes into Roman culture by asking them or forcing them to learn, what language did the Romans speak? Latin. And so the Gauls would then be forced to speak Latin. They would maybe be forced to change the way they dress. Their cities would start to look a little bit different, the architecture, and they would be gradually assimilated into Roman culture and become Roman citizens. Same thing happened in Hispania in Spain, in Dacia, which is now Romania, and all over the Mediterranean.
They really like the IAs.
What's that?
They really like IAs.
Yeah, right? And that has to do with Latin and place names. They would often end in IA. They called this portion of their map Germania. Germania. The Germans who lived there didn't call it Germania, but the Romans referred to them as the Germanic tribes, the barbarians living outside of civilization. Usually the marker was this river called the Rhine. It's a major river that goes from Switzerland on up to Holland. And it was difficult for the Romans to establish too much of a foothold into the Germanic tribal territories on this side of the Rhine. But Augustus said, hey, let's give it a shot. And he asked a general named Varus to go in with 3 legions. Legion is like 10,000 Roman soldiers, give or take, and go conquer that territory, build some forts, build some cities, expand, and then assimilate the Germanic tribes into Roman culture. But this guy, Arminius, sometimes called Herman, was a Germanic tribesman who had grown up. He had actually, as a teenager, gone to Rome and studied there. He was schooled there, and he learned how Roman military tactics work and how they operate. He learned the language. But then he moved back and returned to his Germanic tribes people But he got wind that these legions were coming, and he helped the other Germanic tribes unite together and set up an ambush. Again, another map of what Rome would have looked like. And they, outside of a forest called the Teutoburg Forest, Teutoburger Wald, near Cognates, which is basically in the middle of Germany. He got together, roughly 15,000 Germanic tribesmen to go hide in the forest here at the top of this hill. And he knew that the way Romans marched, they would be in this path, they would be single file pretty much, about 5 wide and really spread out. Imagine 30,000 people marching 5 wide. That line would stretch for a couple miles. And as that went around this curve, they wouldn't be able to see or communicate with each other anymore. And so as the line of Roman legionaries got to about here, they launched an ambush on those soldiers, fired arrows, rolled boulders down the hill, charged, screaming. It was a massacre. They cut everybody off from each other. Some guys tried to flee into the swamp. They were mowed down. Killed basically all 30,000 legionaries that day. It was a humongous embarrassment for both Varus, the general, and Augustus, the emperor. And Augustus kind of just said, let's not go back there for a while. That's not to say the Romans didn't try and go conquer Germania or fought with the Germanic tribes again. They just didn't make as significant and serious of a push for a long time. What that means for the German language is the people who lived there, and there were a lot of different Germanic tribes, and they spoke a lot of different variations of a similar language, but they got left alone. Is basically the point. 476 is a turning point in history. It's when different tribes from the east, mostly the Visigoths, Vandals, were able to attack a weakened Roman Empire and sack the city of Rome. The Roman Empire continued over here in Constantinople in a various form, but the Western Roman Empire collapsed. 476 is the date given to that. So, a couple of the Germanic tribes up here, they're still speaking an early version of German. Saxons, Angles, and Utes. Saxons, Angles, and Utes. They get wind that the Romans have left this island over here. And that island is supposed to be pretty good for farming. It's supposed to be pretty safe from other tribes trying to take them over. And they get on some boats. It's only like a couple days trip, day or two. Sail over and land right here at the mouth of the Thames and set up settlements. And they name the place after themselves. The Angles name it after themselves. They name it Engelen. Yeah? Does that make any amount of sense? So the Angles were a Germanic tribe speaking an early form of German. The Angles. Angle. Yeah. They're similar enough to the Saxons that they generally get along, although they fight within each other. And by the time we get to about 800 AD, there's a kingdom of England with a Saxon king. The Utes have come over and become part of the culture. These are Danish people. And we've also got Vikings fighting all the time to try and secure a foothold in England. The Angles and Saxons, the Anglo-Saxon culture there is fairly Germanic in nature. They still speak what they spoke when they were in their tribes here. It's funny because the Germans living here started to change how they speak right about this time, 800, 900, 1000 AD. They're starting to change how they pronounce things. These people are keeping it about the same, but they have a big new influence at about the date 1066. Have you heard this day in history? 1066. It's one of those standout dates because this French guy, he was Norman, lived in Normandy, in the north coast of France. He spoke an early version of France. Are French and German very related? No, because French is based on Latin. Yeah? These Germanic languages are a different language family. But William, this French guy, this Norman, hears that he might be able to convince people he should be the King of England. But he'd probably have to fight a war, win a battle against a guy named Harold, who is the current King of England. Harold has a rough time right now because some Vikings are thinking the same thing. From Norway and Sweden, they sail down and make him fight a battle here in the north, and Harold wins, this Anglo-Saxon king. But then Harold has to take his exhausted army and march back down here to the south, while William is coming up from the north and meet in battle, in which Harold would eventually get shot in the face with an arrow.
That was awesome.
So, Harold, the Anglo-Saxon king, has died. William, the Norman king, now declares himself King of England. And one of the first things he does is says, all right, guys, start learning some French. And most of the people living in England didn't want to learn French right away. So there was a gradual mixing of the languages there. Norman French with Latin roots, and Anglo-Saxon language with its Germanic roots. Fast forward another 450 years, and you start to get writers that we can understand, like William Shakespeare, writing in early modern English that we can read and comprehend. So that's, in a really simplified version, the basis for why there are so many cognates between English and German. Questions on that history story? So let's talk, here are some of our tribes. We've got Anglo-Saxon, Jutes, Vikings, Normans, all mix it together, we get English. What are some examples? Again, we've got ones like Buch. Yeah, das Buch. It's a book. Yeah, you want to try it? Das Buch.
Das Buch.
They're good. Das Haus.
Das Haus.
Der Apfel.
Der Apfel.
These are all cognates. They're not spelled exactly the same, but close enough. You guys already speak a bunch of German. These are all German words. Some of them are French, like hotel is a French word that is used by Germans and English. But we've got hotel, restaurant, party, sport, Bank, Auto, Arm, Bus, Finger, Toilette. Those are all words in German that mean exactly what you'd expect them to. They're called what?
Cognates.
You got it. They're cognates. And the problem, though, is that we have some words that look the same, sound the same, and don't mean the same thing.
Like, oh.
Mm-hmm. These are called false cognates or false friends sometimes. Like, for example, a chef in English is the guy or gal in charge of a restaurant. In German, that's just the boss. Like, mein Chef is Herr Siebersma. My boss is Mr. Siebersma. But chef could be a CEO or just the manager of a company. In English, the word pickle is a cucumber marinated in vinegar. In German, the word pickle is a zit on your face. So those are quite different.
You want to eat some pickles?
Yeah. Ah, man. Last one. Gift in German means poison. In English, that's a nice thing to get on your birthday. See you guys on Monday. Have a nice weekend.